So this is the feature-length debut film as a director for Robin Wright, who at this point is probably best known for her role in House of Cards. But she's actually had a very impressive career and has been around for longer than I've been alive. And some of the earlier work you might recognize her from includes things like The Princess Bride and Forrest Gump. And even though she's directing this, doesn't mean she's put acting on the back burner. Because she also plays the protagonist here, a middle-aged woman who's going through a rough time. Now in the beginning it's not really clear what the source of her troubles are, but you get some clues fairly early on. What is clear though is that she needs time to herself and decides to do something rather radical. Radical for a city girl at least, because she decides to move to a tiny cabin in the mountains of Wyoming. Which I think is kind of a secret dream for a lot of people, but not many people actually do it, because it's a hard life and far from glamorous, but she thinks that's exactly what she needs. And that's a great premise for a movie, and it's probably the primary reason I watched this. I just like these sort of wilderness survival stories, or whatever you want to call it, where someone either willingly or unwillingly goes into the wild and has to figure out how to get by. There's just something primal and compelling about that concept to me. Now, interestingly, that does bring me to the first issue with the movie, and I don't really know how to even bring it up without sort of giving away some of the events, but let's just say that as prepared as she might seem on the surface, she does get a lot of supplies, for instance. There were some very basic, no-brainer things that she should have made sure she had covered, which she didn't, and I just found that to be a little bit frustrating, to be honest. Like, come on, you're allowed to be naive and move into the woods on your own, but you can't be so dumb that you don't make sure to have your basics covered. However, in a way that flaw actually ended up being the secret blessing that saves the movie. Because without it, we wouldn't be introduced to Damien Bashir's character, Miguel, who turns out to be the heart and soul of the movie, and I think he's just phenomenal in this. And without him, his character and his performance, this movie would have been in some real trouble. Because the protagonist here isn't actually that interesting to me. She's fine. It works. But she's not good enough or interesting enough to carry a movie on her own, and I think Miguel definitely fills in the gaps there. But yeah, I'm not sure what happened with the writing here, because, well, the woman, Edie, is most definitely the central character the entire movie revolves around. And I'm not sure how they managed to make a side character that much more interesting and compelling. But as I said, I'm glad they did, because I loved him in this, and he was the reason I got emotionally invested in it too. And I think the movie ended up working really well, even though the roles sort of switched there. Now when it comes to the more technical side of things, I think they did a pretty good job overall. The more intense, actiony scenes I wasn't a huge fan of. The way they were shot and edited just felt a bit off. But thankfully there's really not a lot of that, and the rest of it was perfectly fine. I mean, the cinematography was great, and in a location like that it would be a waste if it wasn't, because the spot they shot in was gorgeous, I mean just stunning. And I feel like they utilized the nature and the surroundings very well here. But yeah, my only two real issues with this ended up being not really issues at all. Now that doesn't mean I think this is some sort of masterpiece, but I do think it's pretty good. And as a result, I believe I'm gonna give this one a solid 7. Boop. But would I recommend it? Sure, why not? Especially if you like these sort of smaller, quaint dramas. Then you should probably check it out, or don't. After all, I'm not your dad. But hey, what are your thoughts on this? Have you seen it? Did you like it? Let me know. And if you enjoyed the video, maybe give it a thumbs up or sub to the channel, because that would be fantastic.